Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Newsline at noon, with 8 farms in Korea confirmed to have been hit by bird flu, authorities are tightening quarantine measures and culling all ducks within a 3-kilometre radius of infected farms. Attending this year's World Economic Forum in Davos, President Park Geun-hye urges global business leaders to take part in reshaping Korea into a creative economy. Plus, as anti-government protesters intensify their campaign to disrupt next month's election, the Thai government places Bangkok and its surrounding province under a state of emergency. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start with the latest on the bird flu crisis here in Korea. Nearly 300,000 ducks and chickens have been culled so far, all in Korea's southwestern Jeollabuk-do Province. So far, the number of confirmed bird flu cases stands at 8.
And facing the unenviable task of trying to contain the highly pathogenic H5N8 strain, quarantine officials have been working around the clock and have reinforced stricter measures. And for more, we're going to connect live to our Connie Lee, who's out on the field in Jeollabuk-do Province. Connie, what is the situation like there?
Well, Yutan, I'm here in Puang-gun, or Puang County, which is about 300 kilometers south of Seoul. Now, if you come to this area, you'll see a lot of quarantine officials in their full gear and a lot of barricades like this that you see behind me. Now, as you can see, if you can read Korean, this sign is a do not enter sign, and these are safety lines that are placed about 100 meters away from a farm that is suspected of being infected with the latest bird flu outbreak. Now, I just heard from a quarantine official here that the mound to my left is actually the location of where some ducks were culled over the weekend. Now, health officials here have been working around the clock despite the cold and the heavy snow that actually fell yesterday. Now, all vehicles are being sterilized in this area and reservoirs are being disinfected. Safety measures have been intensified, with the government now ordering even more ducks to be culled. Now, up until yesterday, the government had ordered that all ducks within a 500-meter radius of an infected farm be slaughtered. But that limit now stands at 3 kilometers, so that's much wider. I was here when that mandate fell, and within a few hours, my crew and I saw quarantine officials and tractors going into different farms to start culling the birds. Now, with the expanded limit, officials expect an additional 135,000 ducks to be killed just in this area. Mark, Yusan.
So, Connie, this new order comes as there are reports of new cases in the area, right?
Yes, there are new suspected cases popping up all around the area, which suggests that the migratory birds, which were first found with the infected H5N8 virus, could be spreading the virus all around the country. Now, officials are trying to track the birds, which are disinfecting the areas where they're likely to land. Now, there are no cases of the H5N8 strain infecting humans, and officials are keen to stress that the people who normally get infected with the bird flu are the ones who directly or indirectly come in contact with a sick bird or its feces. So accordingly, health officials have put all farmers here in the nation on high alert. Back to you guys.
All right, Connie, thank you for that report. That was our Connie Lee reporting from Korea's southwestern Jeollabuk-do Province on the latest developments in the bird flu crisis that looks to be spreading despite the best efforts of quarantine officials.
Now, while Korea is worrying about its own bird flu outbreak, other countries in Asia are having their own problems.
Different bird flu strains to the one identified here in Korea have killed several people in China and Vietnam. Our Kwon So-ah has the details.
With more and more people coming down with bird flu in China, authorities there say the virus could infect and kill more ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday. The World Health Organization said this week that the number of confirmed bird flu infections in China is fast approaching 50, with the number of infected people doubling in the space of a week. Health agencies say the number of infections could explode toward the end of the month when millions of Chinese people set off to their hometowns to celebrate the Chinese New Year. Officials say 2 people in Shanghai, a patient in his 70s and a medical worker in his 30s, died of the highly pathogenic H7N9 strain of bird flu last Saturday. 2 people in Hong Kong succumbed to the same strain earlier this month. A 52-year-old Vietnamese man died from the H5N1 strain over the weekend, the first bird flu death in the country in 9 months. A Canadian national said to have been infected during a trip to China also died of the same strain earlier this month. The WHO expects this trend to continue for the next few months since the cold weather helps to circulate the virus. 385 people have died out of around 650 confirmed H5N1 infections since an outbreak in 2003. At least 45 have died from H7N9 since 2013. While it's widely known the virus can be transferred from birds to humans, some scientists fear the virus could mutate and make human-to-human infection possible. There has not been a single case of human infection so far of the H5N8 strain of bird flu that has appeared in ducks in Korea. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The Korean government will announce a set of measures later on this Wednesday to deal with what is the worst data leak in Korea's history, with millions of people affected. The measures are expected to include stronger monitoring of staff at financial companies involved in customer data management, tougher regulations to prevent financial firms from sharing client data with their affiliates, and stronger punitive measures on financial institutions. Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok said at a meeting with economy-related policymakers earlier today that the government will hold accountable anyone involved in the massive data leak. He also promised the clients of the 3 card firms in question, KB국민, NH-농협, and Lotte, full compensation for any damages or losses they may incur. President Park Geun-hye is in Davos for this year's World Economic Forum. Ahead of the forum's official opening, President Park spent the day meeting with business leaders from around the world to urge them to invest more in Korea. Our presidential correspondent Oh Jin-ju, who's traveling with the president, sent us this report.
Promoting Korea to the world's business leaders was the name of the game for President Park on the eve of the World Economic Forum in Davos. Taking part in Korea Night, an event dedicated to showcasing Korean culture and technology, which has been held in Davos for 6 straight years now, President Park called on the world's most powerful executives to look for investment opportunities in Korea's so-called creative economy. She promised to ease regulations on investment, except for ones that are truly necessary, to foster a better environment for foreign businesses.
이처럼 기업 활동을 하는데 최적의 환경을 만들고 세계 기업들이 한국에 마음껏 투자할 수 있도록 문화를 개방하고 있습니다. 여러분들도 한국에서 도약의 기회를 잡을 수 있기를 바랍니다.
Among the global figures attending the event were Lloyd's chairman John Nelson and Jacob Frankel, chairman of JP Morgan Chase International. President Park also met with Cisco CEO John Chambers.
I've wanted to meet you for a year now. Thank you for giving us the time.
And discussed ways to cooperate in the sector of Internet of Everything.
특히 요즘 한국에서도 사물 인터넷에 대해서 주목들을 하고 얘기를 많이 하고 있습니다.
Internet of Everything is a rising industry that aims at connecting objects in homes, offices, cars, and elsewhere to the Internet so they automatically adjust to people's needs and preferences. President Park asked Cisco to actively invest in Korea and closely work with Korean firms to help the nation realize her vision of a creative economy. Chambers said Cisco's joint project with the British government to develop the European country's high-tech industry is very similar to President Park's vision. He then said he would be very happy to expand cooperation with Korean institutions and companies in the sector. President Park will be making an opening speech on the creative economy and entrepreneurship in the first session of this year's World Economic Forum on Wednesday. She will also pitch Korea's qualities to the CEOs of global companies like Qualcomm, Aramco, and Siemens. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News, Bern.
The International Monetary Fund has upwardly revised its growth forecast for the world economy this year to 3.7%. Our Hwang Jie also tells us what the IMF expects from the US Federal Reserve's stimulus tapering.
In its updated World Economic Outlook on Tuesday, the International Monetary Fund revised its outlook for this year to 3.7%, up 0.1 percentage points from its earlier forecast. The fund expects the world economy to expand 3.9% in 2015. The IMF said the upward revision comes largely on the economic recovery in advanced nations, which is also leading a rebound in exports in emerging economies. That is reflected in the IMF forecast, which revised up its growth outlook for the U.S. in 2014 to 2.8% and the Eurozone economies to 1%. The Korean economy is also expected to pick up this year on strong external demands.
The global economic recovery will lead to expanded exports of Korean products. That will eventually lead to a recovery in the domestic economy.
The IMF, however, cited weak domestic demand in emerging nations as remaining concerns. It went on to say that domestic weakness combined with capital outflows prompted by the U.S. Federal Reserve's bond-buying stimulus tapering could result in sharper capital outflows and exchange rate adjustments. The Korean government has pledged to focus this year's economic policies on boosting domestic demand to create more jobs and achieve a balanced economy. The IMF's forecast on the Korean economy is expected to be released around February or April. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says North Korea is signaling that it is ready to resume the long-stalled six-party denuclearization talks without any preconditions, but other member nations are asking for the North to first demonstrate its sincerity. At a press conference in Moscow on Tuesday, Lavrov said Russia is working closely with China for an agreement and added related countries should also make reaching a deal their top priority. The comments come amid a major peace offensive by the North following the execution of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's once powerful uncle Jang Sung-taek last month. The multilateral dialogue involving the two Koreas, the US, China, Japan and Russia, has been at a standstill since late 2008.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
In the face of growing violence, the Thai government has declared a 60-day state of emergency in Bangkok and its surrounding provinces starting on this Wednesday. The move announced on Tuesday allows for curfews to be imposed, for suspects to be held without charges, and for the banning of political gatherings. Anti-government protesters have blocked off parts of Bangkok in an attempt to get Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra to step down, and the rallies have turned more violent in recent days. Since the protests began in November, 9 people have died and hundreds more have been wounded. A Korean media outlet has released a confidential report proving that university medical schools and the Japanese Navy conducted brutal experiments on living people during wartime. The top secret reports were stored at Japan's Parliamentary Library. Our Sun Jung-in has the details.
This is a confidential report by the Japanese Navy exposing medical experiments conducted during World War II on living people. The report details an experiment on the absorption action of iperite known as mustard gas, which rots human skin.
This is a dissertation based on a medical experiment on living bodies to develop protective army clothing.
It is part of a trove of documents stored at Japan's National Assembly's library and released by a Korean media outlet, proving that Japanese army and university medical schools conducted gruesome medical experiments on war prisoners and civilians while they are still alive. It is the first evidence of such experiments having been conducted by institutions other than the infamous Japanese military Unit 731 in China. The documents also reveal that medical departments at 9 imperial universities in Japan during that time carried out similar brutal medical experiments.
Even after 1930, the cruel experiments continued at other Japanese universities. Unfortunately, Unit 731 wasn't the only one to conduct experiments on living people.
One of the most notorious cases of human experimentation involved 8 members of a U.S. Air Force B-29 crew. The experiment was conducted in 1945 from May to June at Kyushu University in Japan. The American prisoners were subjected to vivisection and other gruesome experiments before being killed. Professors and students from the university were later brought to trial on charges of wrongful removal of body parts and cannibalism. None were convicted of war crimes. The Japanese government has yet to comment on the revelation and has thus far only ever acknowledged the existence of Unit 731, not the experiments it was reported to have conducted. 손정인, Arirang News.
In a move that is almost certain to throw fuel on China's territorial disputes with its neighbors, Beijing plans to base a huge civilian patrol ship on one of the main islands it controls in the disputed South China Sea and begin regular patrols. The China Ocean News, published by the State Oceanic Administration, says the ship would be based on Wuri Island, which China calls Sansha City on the Paracel Islands. The report says the regular patrol will serve to protect China's maritime interests, but didn't say when they will begin. China claims virtually the entire South China Sea, putting it at odds with several countries in Southeast Asia, including the Philippines and Vietnam.
Syria stands accused of systematic killings and torture on a truly horrific scale. A report detailing the Assad regime's atrocities was released on Tuesday as delegations began arriving in Switzerland for international talks aimed at ending the bitter conflict. Park Ji-won reports.
The new report reveals the Syrian government's systematic use of execution and torture. A team of former international war crimes prosecutors released their findings and ample photo evidence to back their claim that the Assad regime tortured and killed about 11,000 detainees.
We came to the conclusion that the killings were of an industrial kind, such that the evidence we found would certainly underpin any count of a crime at international law.
The photos were taken by a former Syrian military police officer who has since defected and fled the country.
The pictures were reminiscent of the worst pictures that came out of Belsen and Auschwitz after the Second World War. And these poor creatures were not just starved, but they were also tortured whilst they were starving.
Reacting to the report, the U.S. State Department condemned Syria in the strongest possible terms, saying the photos show apparent actions that would be serious international crimes. Britain's Foreign Secretary also expressed shock and horror at seeing the report.
I've seen a lot of this evidence. It is compelling and horrific. And it is important that those who have perpetrated these crimes are one day held to account.
Meanwhile, the world's leading human rights advocacy group has slammed the international community for not doing enough to end the atrocities being committed in Syria. In its annual report released on Tuesday, Human Rights Watch said world powers have focused too much on bringing President Bashar al-Assad and his government to the negotiating table and put aside humanitarian matters such as the protection of civilians.
What I hope the people gathered in Geneva will do is not simply to try to work out a long-term peace deal, but in the interim to put pressure on the Syrian government to stop targeting civilians, to stop deliberately depriving civilians of humanitarian aid.
The group also criticized Syria's close allies, Russia and China, for turning a blind eye to the humanitarian crisis in the country. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Looking to crush terrorist threats to the Sochi Olympics before they get off the ground. Russian police have killed a senior Islamist militant in Russia's North Caucasus region. The country's National Anti-Terror Committee says Eldar Magatov, A suspect in attacks on Russian targets and alleged leader of an insurgent group in Dagestan died Tuesday in a shootout with police. Security forces are also scouring Sochi for a so-called Black Widow terrorist who may have arrived in the Olympic host city early this month to organize an attack before or during the Games. The Islamist militant group behind 2 suicide bombings in the southern city of Volgograd last month has warned of more attacks if the Olympics go ahead in Sochi. Much of North America and Europe has been struck by unusually cold winter weather this season. The northeastern United States has been slammed by yet another snowstorm that shut down government offices in Washington. Northern Europe is in the grips of a cold snap that is expected to cause temperatures to plunge even further this weekend. Kim Min-ji reports.
It's cold out there in both the U.S. and Europe. A winter blizzard slammed the northeastern United States on Tuesday, shutting down government offices and grounding thousands of flights. The U.S. National Weather Service said that the storm, packing strong winds of up to 60 kilometers an hour, has dumped more than 30 centimeters of snow across the northeastern states. U.S. government offices in Washington were shuttered, while city offices and schools in several states were also closed. Residents in the affected areas have been warned not to travel during the storm, and about 3,000 flights were canceled and more than 4,000 delayed, causing chaos for travelers. The storm comes just 2 weeks after the polar vortex brought heavy snow and record low temperatures to much of the nation. And over in Europe, several countries have been hit by a bitter cold snap. Temperatures fell to sub-freezing levels in the middle of a winter that has been relatively mild until now. According to Germany's National Weather Agency, DWD, Tuesday, temperatures in northeastern cities, including Berlin, are forecast to plummet to minus 14 degrees Celsius this weekend. Fallen trees and frozen train tracks have made rail services difficult nationwide, while trains were delayed for several hours. In the midst of the deep freeze, more than 130 accidents have been reported. 2 people died on Monday near Niendorf on the Baltic coast after their cars collided on an icy road. Sweden and Norway have also seen their temperatures plunge to below minus 40 degrees this week. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And time now to get an update on the forecast with our Lee Ji-yeon at the Weather Center. Hello there, Ji-yeon.
Good afternoon, Mark and Yusan. Well, it looks like the icy spots on the highways have cleared up, but the sidewalks are still covered in ice and snow.
Yeah, that's true. You really have to be very careful out there.
Right.
Because, you know, it's very easy to slip and fall.
Right, and to decrease your risk of falling, you should avoid wearing slippery shoes or walking with your hands in your pockets. And if you do fall, be sure to take care of yourself right away and go to the doctor to get a checkup. Well, we're expecting the cold snap to ease up this afternoon. The sun is out and temperatures will rebound back to above freezing later today here in Seoul. So hopefully that will melt some of the ice patches on the sidewalks. Now, as I said earlier, it will be mostly to partly sunny day today, but we will start to see increase in clouds as the day goes on. And tomorrow, the weather will be much milder and temperatures should be about 4 to 5 degrees higher than today with a good amount of sunshine. And Friday should be even milder with temperatures getting up to around 8 degrees Celsius here in Seoul. But on Saturday, we have rain in the forecast nationwide, but that will not add a chill to the air. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will get up to 2. Daegu and Gwangju will see a high of 5 and 4 respectively, while Busan tops out at 6. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju will climb up to 6 in the afternoon. Daejeon will get up to 2, while the top temperature on Kumgangsan Mountain will be at -4. Now that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather condition around the world. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and let's send it back to Mark and Yusun in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, Jeon, for the weather there. And those are the stories we're following at this hour.
And we'll be back tomorrow at noon right here on Newsline at Noon.